Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar is Reopening Denver Cultural Organizations, Safety and Visitation During COVID-19. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, the SCFD, CDCA, and the Collaborative of the SCFD. Today we'll have the Denver Museum of Nature and Science share recent survey results that they sent out to about 5,000 community members to ask them about their perceptions, intentions, and attitudes of safety and visitation during COVID-19. They've done an incredible job turning that survey around, and they've shared it with many cultural organizations. So we'll hear from them, and then we'll also hear from the Denver Zoo and the Denver Botanic Gardens, which just actually recently reopened last Friday, and we'll hear from them on their strategies and how things are going. So first, I'm going to introduce all of our panelists, but before I do that, I wanted to let you know that this webinar does have closed captioning available if you would like it or need it. Kelly Bogg from the Office of Film, Television, and Media will drop it into the chat for you. You just simply click on the link and it will start doing the closed captioning. So our panelists today from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, we have Andréa Giron Mathern. She's the Director of Community Research and Engagement Strategies, as well as Ellen Roth, Supervisor from Community Research and Engagement Strategies, and Jacqueline Altreuter, hopefully I pronounced that correct, Director of Engagement, Volunteers, Interns, and Workstudy students. We also have Marie Revenew, Vice President for External Relations at Denver Zoo, and Denver Botanic Gardens, Mary Bradley, Director of Membership, Visitor, and Volunteer Services. So thanks so much for joining. I know that we have a lot of calls with us today. People are still joining. So I am going to pass it over to Ellen to share out the survey results. So over to you, Ellen.
Great. I'm just going to start our presentation here, and Andréa will actually introduce this study for you.
Yes, thank you again for inviting us to present this. You know, as the pandemic hit and we started to come to a better realization of what this meant for our cultural institutions, it became very clear to my team and I that, you know, we had the ability and the opportunity to reach out across the city to our audiences and our community members to find out what was important to them, what were their perceptions, intentions, and attitudes as we looked towards reopening. So as Jannett mentioned, this was a very large citywide survey with many participating organizations. Oops, sorry. So here are the participating organizations. It also was very quick, as you can imagine. It was, you know, we were trying to pull this together at what felt like, you know, in 5 minutes, and reaching out. We were really excited to get so many organizations on board. Of course, we weren't able to get everyone, and there were a lot of organizations that still hoped to participate. And at the end, we'll talk about our plan for following up. As we all know, the COVID-19 situation is continuing to evolve and change. And so our plan is to continue to take a pulse of our community members and see how they're feeling and what changes that we're making feel comfortable and what they're hoping, you know, might be reintroduced into our new normal. So I do want to give a very special thank you for everybody who did participate in the study and helped us with distribution. So first, we're going to talk just a little bit about intentions to visit Denver cultural organizations. You'll see in this first slide, so one of the things about predicting future behavior, it's actually pretty hard to do on a survey. As a participant, we're usually much more generous about our future selves than we tend to be. If you think about things like New Year's resolutions or things like that, you know, we we are optimists and view ourselves in always sort of a very fine, hopeful light. But what people often say is that our actual best predictor of future behavior is our past behavior. So we wanted to find out like what past behavior was, just to get a baseline. There were a lot of participating organizations who don't do visitor surveys, and so we wanted to find out about visitation within the last year. And so you can see here how many people visited which organizations within a year prior to this survey being distributed. Then we wanted to ask about sort of short-term plans. So, you know, this hit right at the time of spring break and within a period of sort of people making plans for summer. And we all know that many of our institutions see a large spike in visitation during those months. And so we asked about people's plans pre-COVID for intent to visit within 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, and a year. And so you'll see these sort of like very lovely ombre charts. And the lighter on the left is 1 month, then it moves up to 3 months, 6 months, and then the deeper maroon on the end is indicating of they plan to go within a year. Then, of course, we needed to ask, so now that COVID is a real thing and we're looking at reopening, and we didn't then, and many of us still don't have reopening dates, firm reopening dates. But, you know, once we're able to reopen, what are your plans for returning? And so it's a really interesting phenomenon to look at here. So again, these kind of ombre charts with the lightest on the left-hand side are return to visit within 1 month. And you'll see that really has shifted. So fewer people plan to return in the first month, more, but fewer pre-COVID in 3 months, 6 months. But then when you look out to a year, it actually hasn't changed much. So essentially what that's telling us is that within 1 year, people predict that their visitation patterns will be right back to normal, or as close to normal as we can imagine the world a year from now. So these are charts that just kind of say the same thing. So each of these is for the tier 1 institutions. And just as a note, we chose to highlight the tier 1 institutions because they represent a type of cultural institution that is replicated in smaller tier 2 and tier 3 organizations. So we wanted, you know, even if a tier 3 organization couldn't participate or couldn't get a really large sample size, we wanted them to have a reference point. And so hopefully these can be used as that. But you'll see this is within that first month of reopening, and you'll see these sort of slanted lines pretty large, with the exception here of the Botanic Gardens. So we'll be excited to hear if this held true, but from those sellout rates from the time ticketing, I think people were very excited to get into those outdoor spaces. A slightly less dramatic curve for the Denver Zoo, another outdoor space, and then you'll see more dramatic curves for the Art Museum, Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and DCPA. So then we repeated this chart within 3 months, and you'll see, you know, still pretty dramatic curves for the indoor institutions, and still a decent decrease for the Denver Zoo. And then here, the next one will go to 6 months. So you're starting to see those lines kind of flatten out just a little bit, which is what we were saying in that initial chart. And then our final one is within 1 year of opening. And here's where we start to see like, okay, here's about when, you know, we're anticipating having a lot more information. We're anticipating understanding, you know, what kind of control measures we have as a society. And so people really anticipate being able to and feeling a higher degree of comfort visiting our institutions after a year of the reopening dates. I'm going to kick this over to Ellen. We're just kind of doing a little back and forth so you don't get tired of one of us.
Great, awesome. So then I'm going to talk very briefly about the anticipated impact on visitation and membership from an economic perspective. So obviously, you know, feelings about visitation are also coupled with the economic realities that a lot of our patrons are facing. So we asked a question about whether or not acknowledging that the COVID-19 pandemic has created economic hardships for many individuals and families in our community. And then we asked if they anticipate that their current economic situation would impact their visitation. So the good news is that, looking at all respondents across all of the different participating institutions, there isn't a tremendous impact from an economic perspective on plans to visit when we look at that particular consideration. And then we asked the same thing for anticipated impact on current membership. So same question. The pandemic has created economic hardships for individuals and families. Do you anticipate that your current economic situation will impact your membership status? So again, we see a lot of people that there is no impact on their plans for their current membership, or the slightly higher bump on the more likely to renew their current membership side. But you can see the combined percentages towards the end of the right end of the chart here that show you those combined percentages. Almost all of them are in about 90%, no impact or more likely to renew. And then we also looked at what visitors will need to feel comfortable again when visiting our institutions. And this question was asked about that larger list that Andréa was referencing earlier. So not all of those organizations that we listed in those original questions were organizations that participated. We asked about local libraries, we asked about performing arts organizations, really to round out the cultural landscape of the Denver metro area, as she pointed out. So this question was targeted towards respondents thinking about that larger list as well. So thinking about what people will need to feel comfortable coming back. What we see is at least 1 in 3 respondents is selecting one of these top 4 options. So starting with about 1 in 3 people, the ability to be outside or outdoors, which we see in the same trend in those likely to visit slides with the Denver Zoo and the Denver Botanic Gardens. The ability to avoid lines, about 40% of people. The availability of a coronavirus vaccine, which unfortunately is one of the only things here that's kind of outside of our control, but about half of people selected that option. And then limits on crowd size, which I know a lot of us are implementing time ticket models, and that was the example that we gave folks. So about 3/4 of people suggested that they would need something like time tickets or and the ability to limit crowds, the exposure to crowds on their next visit. So as is referenced in the description on this slide, this is part of a much larger report where we break out these responses by institution and by each one of those little topics there. So that report will either be sent to you or possibly linked in our chat somehow. So access to that report will be available to you if you'd like to look by institution. And then finally, we asked people to tell us how the COVID-19 pandemic impacts their feelings about visiting cultural institutions. And we got a lot of really deeply emotional responses from people. People have a lot of feelings about revisiting our cultural institutions. So again, survey participants were asked how it impacted their feelings, and the responses were varied. There's obviously people on both extremes, some people who are skeptical of reopening plans or aren't likely to visit within the first month, and then some people that are ready to jump back in. But a lot of people are kind of in this middle frame where we call them cautiously optimistic. They are counting on our institutions to keep them safe and to take the appropriate precautionary measures. And they have this deep abiding trust in the sense that we will do that for them, and so they feel safe returning. So that trust inspires some confidence in returning to our institutions. And ultimately, too, what we hear is that their decision to come back is not going to be dictated necessarily by our governor, by our mayor saying it's time to reopen. It's going to be a deeply personal decision that's tied to their feelings of safety, the changing day-to-day nature of the pandemic, and all those kinds of factors. So So yeah, so again, you can read through some of these quotes here, but we heard a lot of really interesting things in this open-ended response.
Ellen, before we pop to this, there's a couple of questions and I just don't remember the details, but do you remember ballpark for completed responses?
Yeah, so it was about 5,300 responses.
Okay, yeah, so we sent it to a much larger pool, but it was just over 5,000 people who responded to that. And then it was at the beginning of this month, but I can't remember the actual dates that our survey was open.
Sure. We fielded this, I believe, from April 24th until May 4th. But I'll double check those dates and have and put them in the chat.
Cool, thank you. All right. Okay, so I just wanted to answer a couple of those before we kicked it down the road a little bit. All right, so then we wanted to understand which safety precautions were most important to visitors. Obviously, we're all trying to juggle what makes the most sense, logistical concerns that we have, budgetary concerns, staffing concerns. And so we went ahead and just asked folks what was the most important to us to help us shed light on some of those. So you'll see here are a whole lot of here are the options of different safety precautions. And we pulled these safety precautions both from what institutions we're planning on doing, but also information from the CDC, from best practices for, schools are drafting what they're doing, retail markets are sort of, thinking about what their retail centers are going to be doing. So we really were looking across fields to see what is the landscape of, sort of re-entry into the world look like so that we could have a better idea. The most important things were, the constant cleaning of high touch areas and encouraging the recommended social distancing. And I think, it's important to understand, like, our visitors view us as the ones who are doing that, us as the ones who are encouraging the social distancing to be taking place. Limiting crowd sizes was of extreme importance. Staff which are clearly adhering to CDC protocols. So one of the sort of most visible demonstrations of that is wearing masks. Limiting capacity for seated events to ensure social distancing. Somebody on the Q&A asked about not a lot of performing arts organizations, and we did really reach out to performing arts organizations, but their scenario really is unique. And so we are right now working with many, I don't even know how many, thank you so much, Jannett, performing arts organizations around the city and possibly beyond to find out how we can create a really unique survey for them that can help get to some of the particularly unique circumstances that surround performance art. And then rounding that out is providing hand sanitizer, so ensuring that people can see that. Requiring guests to wear masks and gloves kind of sits at about 63%, so still important to the majority, or very or extremely important to the majority of people. And then there are kind of these middle of the road ones, which are one-way directional flow through exhibits or through the space. I know there are organizations considering that, and so that's something that people recognize as important, though not, as the most, but still 57% extremely important. Signage about cleaning policies and etiquette. So I think this really reflects, seeing staff adhere to the protocols, but having something that just gives people a sense of ease that things are being taken care of course. And then the ones that didn't sort of feel as important to survey participants were providing guided or private experiences with limited capacity, pre-purchased food or gift options to avoid standing in lines, or taking guest temperatures at entry. Although I know, organizations are thinking about that, and I don't think this should deter anyone. There are a lot of other things that will sort of exemplify our organizations taking safety precautions really seriously on the public front in a way that's really familiar and easy to recognize by our guests.
And then I'll just chime in to say there is a full demographic profile for these respondents, and we're working on a couple of fact sheets that break out different populations. So there is a full demographic profile, mostly broken down by institution, for you to peruse in that larger PDF, in case you're wondering who took this survey. And then also, as I mentioned, we'll share those fact sheets with Jannett as well that look specifically at responses that are from people who are over 65, responses from people with kids or without kids, and then also responses from people of color or people who identify as white or Caucasian. So yeah, so we'll have those fact sheets broken out for you in the near future.
Oh, sorry. Sometimes I forget to mute. And then finally, you know, people were talking about our institutions, and I think, you know, we all know that we are so fortunate to live in a state and a city that really deeply values our cultural institutions. I think that's seen, you know, throughout the survey, people's intentions to start coming back, people not seeing it impact their membership or, you know, things like that we will still be a priority. And this quote from a community member just really left a good sort of feeling on our hearts. And that it's just saying, I think this last part, aside from moments of grace, charity, and unconditional love, the arts is what we as humans do best. And so I think it just communicates to us that you know, our city, our community are waiting and eager, and they will be there to come back, you know, in whatever way that means, whatever our new normal is, as soon as they can. So I think it's really optimistic and should just give us a sense that we really are wanted and needed. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. We will look up response rate. I don't have it offhand. Another one about event-based organizations. So we did reach out to event-based organizations, particularly as we're heading into the summer months, and a lot of them are canceling. I think we didn't get a huge response back from people to participate at this point. I think right now where they are is really thinking about the extreme impact of this summer, when so many of them have really high profile events during the summer months in our beautiful Colorado weather. So we intend on continuing this survey. So, you know, we talked about how the situation changes almost daily, at least by the week. And we want to be sure that we can provide everybody with information that is adaptable and changing and gives us what we need best. So as we start to have a few more opening dates confirmed, we're going to actually do a post-opening survey about 2 to 3 weeks after we have a handful of organizations that open together. We're hearing rumors of maybe the beginning of June. And so we will repeat this survey and provide the findings to people, so that we can continue to look at that, and we will invite, you know, organizations to sort of utilize our survey or whatever feels best, so that we can look at any differences and changes in things like performing arts, indoor, outdoor festivals, those kind of things, so that we can take a look at that. So thank you, Nicole. We are reaching out. It just felt like in this moment that wasn't where the organizations, at least we reached out to, were. But if you know or represent any, we're happy to chat with them.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Ellen, for sharing that survey with us. And I'm sure as you develop the performing arts ones that you've talked about, that you're developing right now, we will share that out again with the community. There's so many different layers with different organizations and unique needs. I can see how you separated that as well to you know, get a better understanding of what those organizations are facing. We're also going to hear from Jacqueline from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science to talk about what their strategies are in terms of reopening. So over to you, Jacqueline.
Great, thank you. I do not have a screen share. I just thought I would talk with you all about what we're planning to do at the museum. We're in the process of opening the museum in phases. So our first phase of opening that we intend to embark upon over the next probably 2 weeks. We're hoping to open sometime in the next coming week or two. Will be just general operations. So that will include summer camps. We're going to host our summer camps. So that would be the only kind of special outside of normal operations thing that we would anticipate doing during phase 1. And general operations also includes member hours. So we'll have a member day, we'll have some member hours every day for the first couple of weeks. And then also our Friday night hours will stay open until 9 p.m. on Friday nights. So that'll just be all general based operations. We won't have any special events. I saw a lot of Q&As about special events. We won't have special events as part of general operations because we're really focusing on the intent of all of these limitations has been intent to control crowds. And we don't anticipate having crowds at any one point. We'll implement all of the same sorts of protocols you saw at the Botanic Gardens if you were lucky enough to get any of those tickets. We'll have time ticketing, we'll have physical distancing queuing throughout the building, things like that. And so we'll phase people coming into the building in a way that allows for people not to be congregating. And we're even considering some of our programmatic operations to be slightly different when we open so that we won't have spaces where people are necessarily congregating and standing around one similar space so that people can keep moving through the building. We do have the advantage of having what is similar to an art installation that's being installed right now. We have Art of the Brick opening. And it really is a very artistic-based, Lego-based exhibit, and that will open in mid-June. So being closed has actually afforded us some ability to really move on some construction projects that we were anticipating. And so there are some places that will be closed due to construction. Space Odyssey has been closed due to construction. Discovery Zone has been closed due to construction. And we'll just take a look at what general operations looks like and get used to our new norms for the first few weeks. And then we'll start layering in what we consider to be phase 2 of reopening, which is really a recovery period where we start to layer in a safe way, all of those other things that we might be able to do that include special events that could draw people in, but still limit the congregating factor of those special events. So we have some ideas around that.
Jacqueline, I have a question to interject for a second. Do you have a particular crowd number that the state has provided as a guideline?
The crowd number is based on the square footage and the space. And when we did our calculations, we took out of our calculations the full square footage of the building and only included the square footage that people can actually walk through. So we removed exhibitry from that square footage calculation. We removed all the behind the scenes areas from that square footage of calculation. And you know, the building, the museum is 600,000 square feet. So it's pretty large.
Huge.
It's huge. And so we're being really thoughtful about taking out all of the areas that aren't actually foot traffic areas for people, so that as we're developing those calculations, we're also considering how quickly people move through certain spaces and what the visitation of other spaces looks like. So it was actually pretty complex mathematically, but you know, it just depends on the location and the time. And we have time ticketing that is limited severely in regards to what our capacity is. So we're really, really reduced on capacity in the sense that for the people who sign up and get time tickets, it's going to feel like the best museum experience they've ever had, probably, because they will be in this space that will feel very, very personal and wonderful for them. So
that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. We're really taking into consideration all of the things that came back in the survey that Andréa did that indicated things like the importance of not having crowds and time ticketing and all of those things that are super important. Hold on a second, I have background. I have a 6-year-old and a puppy. It's a party here. Yeah, I loved seeing some of the signage that was up at the Botanic Gardens this weekend. We're implementing all sorts of very similar sort of systems in place for that. We're going to invite back staff and volunteers for orientations starting this coming week. So we're going to have personalized orientations for all of the staff and the volunteers that are going to be helping with opening, to ensure that everyone has had an opportunity to come into the building and to see it in its new space, and make sure that everybody understands all the safety protocol that are in place and all of that.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. I know questions are coming in, and I just want to get through our 2 other panelists for it, and we'll circle back to them and individually ask each organization. So I'm going to pass it over to Marie Revenew from the Denver Zoo. Over to you, Marie.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to talk about messaging and communications throughout this process. So let me put something a little more exciting up here. Let me take you through. This is Kamara, who is a new mom, and she has definitely been safer at home with her cubs during this time. I'm trying to figure out how to move this forward. There we go. Okay, so I want to talk about our process. You know, we worked with our other Tier 1 organizations, and it was a very organic process from the beginning. Once everything started happening very rapidly in early March, we reached out to one another in various departments just organically. Emails, calls prior to closing. We were in touch during all stages just because it was such an unknown place that we were going into, and we wanted to not only find out best practices, but also check in on one another, see what we could do together, see how we could communicate together. And it was really excellent. As I said, it was more department to department. So our CFO has a weekly call with the other CFOs, talk about financials. Our development team, our development officer works with the other development officers. I've reached out to my counterparts, and it's been a great bonding experience and learning as well. And it really helped us emotionally, operationally, and just helped us be better leaders and also align. The key initiatives were that we talked about were closing, staff reductions, updates, reopening plans and approvals. We were just chatting before this. So it's still going on, and it's very helpful. And I just want to thank my partners out there for helping us through this. So in regards with messaging, I put together this chart. I hope it's not too complex, but basically I wanted to share with you how different levers of messaging and communications were pulled during different times. So for our internal, talking to staff and volunteers, we had a lot of emails. We hosted town halls via Teams or Zoom. So people, because we had some staff still on site taking care of the animals, they were essential staff. And so they have to be there not just to feed the animals, but also to keep up with their training, because from a medical perspective, we had veterinarians on site. So we wanted to make sure the folks that were working from home, as well as the people working on site, felt that they were still part of one zoo team. Manager messages, a task force. Every morning we have a 9 a.m. call with the leaders from various departments. I think there's about 20 of us on there. And we talk about safety measures, CDC reports, local reports. We go through everything. And then, so we've done that throughout, obviously. Then we go into earned. This is our PR aspect. So this is announcement that we're closing, media stories. So throughout this area really actually ramped up quite a bit. We wanted people to understand that number one, the animals are very well taken care of. Number two, that Denver Zoo has 3,000 mouths to feed and is not supported wholly by the city, that we rely on 60% of our budget is through gate admission fees and donations. So it's really important that we keep that going, because we closed down just as our busy season was about to open. And to see this beautiful spring weather is just killing us. We know that people would be enjoying themselves at the zoo. So media was really important, and I'll get to that in a minute, a benefit of that as well. And then owned and shared. This was really where we updated our website. We have a PDF on what to expect of the zoo, and I'll show you just the cover of that. But e-newsletter going out to 60,000 folks every month, sharing stories. We started something on our social media feeds on our Facebook Live every day called Zoo to You. And this was ramped up within 2 days of us learning we were closing, just so we could keep in contact. And it's been an amazing response. We have our Carly as our hostess, and she works with different animal teams throughout the zoo to highlight different animals, and people just love it. And it's also an educational component too. We have Rhino Cam. We have a baby rhino, so we actually we had the camera on there all the time. It's in the birthing area, so the veterinarians can always watch what's going on without interrupting mom and baby. But we chose to take that live so people could get excited about our little baby rhino, Juno, who is adorable, but now she's outside with mom, so she's ready to see everybody. Fundraising, we really ramped that up through membership as well as direct acts and video and campus signage. So this is the information we're developing more and more. In terms of paid, which is our paid advertising, we had pre-closing. We had just launched a new mission on World Wildlife Day, March 3rd. It was a one-day big hit. And then when we were limited closing, I think we had 2 days of limited closing before we closed on March 17th. We suspended that advertising and then turned it back up while we were closed for fundraising. And then with reopening, we will have a full campaign, which ironically enough was called Go Time. It's Go Time, which was developed back in January. So I don't know how much more appropriate that could be. And then fundraising, really driven with a membership drive that was scheduled, but just we changed the messaging a bit. And then donations, we did a baby naming contest. And then we also will have a baby naming for our 2 little cubs that you saw at the beginning, but that will be more on site, more information to come on that. But people love to get in there and give us their recommendations for baby names. So here's some of the assets from a PR and from a advertising perspective. In the middle, there's Sweet Carly with her mask on, who every day does the Zoo to You. We also then post those on YouTube. So if you'd like to see any of those segments, you can go to our YouTube channel and they're all there. We did a graphic for Zoo to You. We put it right up in front on our website so people can tune in easily. The Reopening Safely over on the left, that's a PDF that's currently up on our website that outlines everything we're doing when we reopen. So all the new traffic flow, all the requirements, what the employees are doing to keep safe, as well as how we're limiting traffic flow, timed ticketing, everything we just heard we're doing as well. And then some of the stories that came out, we had significant media and press in the last couple of months. And we just, the media has been, we've been very honest about our situation, but letting them see behind the scenes really what's going on. And then, one of the results of our baby naming contest, there's a little baby Juna in the lower right and with her mom. And then just some banner ads that are with the upcoming campaign, It's Go Time, reserve your spots online. And then your membership, Health Saves Life, that's from the membership. The next, these are just some of the images of our reopening plans. As you were hearing before, it's a lot of calculations about how many people per square foot. So we've actually mapped out a new route around the zoo. And so with that, we calculated based on square footage of people, of the walkways, how many people, but we also have staff and volunteers who will be stationed throughout with different, we all have signed up for shifts, and we also are getting training and help people maneuver, answer questions. Our buildings will be closed. We have over 100 buildings, and so it's very difficult to monitor and manage all of that, even though they have fantastic HVAC systems and ventilation systems, because we have all those little animals in there that have very different needs. Our food service up in the upper right, we will be taking orders online, and then people can sit outside and the food will be pre-packaged. We have the social distancing signs. We tried to be creative using animals. We also tried to be creative in the materials we used for keeping people in this new pathway. As you can see, the staff put it together. We were all very excited to help. We called our kit of parts. So our parts are hay bales, and these feeder troughs with trees and the willow things. And so we try to keep it organic and kind of fun. And then local artists, we've hired some local artists to do murals throughout the zoo, so we don't just have these ugly panels of plywood. We actually have some art, and we're really excited. They've turned out beautiful, and just so happy with the results. We had a donor pay for those artists, so they're not working pro bono, they're actually being paid for their work. And then finally, our employee communications. We've taken this very seriously, and so we have up on the upper right on our intranet, there is a portal that you click, and then all of this information comes up. We also have to self-assess before we can get into any of the buildings. For those of us who are starting to go back, we have our tags that we have to scan, but before we have to, agree that we don't have a fever, we haven't been exposed to our knowledge, and then just information about what we're doing. This is the external, the employee safety procedures. So our potential visitors and anyone else knows how we're keeping our staff safe. And then the lower end there, even our staff we wear masks all the time, particularly the animal care team, because after the Bronx Zoo had some positive cases in their feline with lions and tigers, that was a shocking news to us, because normally those animals do not get it. It's more on the primate side, which are closer to us. Anyway, we're all wearing masks now, and particularly around these sweet little babies. So what we're expecting, based on other zoos in the country, again, it's, we've kept in close contact with our teams here and our tier 1 counterparts, but we've also kept in very close contact with our other accredited zoos. There's 250 of us out of 2,500 in the country. And so we're a very tight-knit group, and some of them have been able to open. Some have been open for a couple weeks now. So some are seeing kind of the lower numbers, and which reflects the research we saw today. And people might be a little more hesitant to come in right away. There is some resistance to wearing masks, particularly in the warmer areas where they are warm to wear. So we're ready for that. Zoo fans will show up. There are some very ardent zoo fans, and they can't wait. And we get some wonderful responses on our social every day. And that people really will understand and abide by new rules. They're kind of conditioned now to it. Working through the last couple months at other institutions or other going to your grocery store or whatever. Selfies with mask-wearing animal statues are a big thing. So we have made masks for all of our little animal statues. I've made 5. I'm really excited to put them on, the statues, but people love that. And it makes the kids feel like, they're part of it too. And then there is a lot of excitement among staff and animals. The animals it's been very interesting. A lot of them are wondering where everyone is. Dobby, our giraffe, he loves people. He's a big ham. We have some animals that are they just love human interaction. And so our animal care teams have been working really hard with them. And then now that some of us are back, we go and visit them more often. And our staff is just so excited. This is what we love to do. We love to have guests there. We love to share our passion and understanding for wildlife. And so we can't wait to welcome people. And so what did we reevaluate? Originally on our application waiver, we were going to have our buildings open, but now we will not open those because there are so many. We did cancel and refunded summer camps. We have so many kids, it was just too much for us to figure out how we could keep them social distance properly. And a lot of it is very interactive, a lot of touching and things like that. So we just canceled it for this year. And again, that's not good for us, but we understand we have to do it for the safety of everyone. And then after reopening, we'll watch and consider guest pathways, ticket sales, evening hours. We may start evening hours, animal encounters. One thing you won't see is that you might be familiar with is, we had demonstrations like the seals and sea lion demonstration every day. We had the elephant demonstration in our Toyota Elephant Passage, and guests congregate in bleachers. And so we can't do that anymore. So we're going to have animal encounters along the pathway, little surprises that I think guests will really have fun with. And just watch how guests are abiding by the rules. We're going to take a lot of surveys on site. So we want to make sure that people are enjoying themselves and getting the best. And so that's it. So thank you and good luck, everyone. I know we can do it. We're almost there. We're in the home stretch. So that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Marie. And thank you so much for sharing that valuable information with everyone too, as they're thinking about their own reopenings. I really appreciate that. I'm going to pass it over to Mary Bradley from Denver Botanic Gardens, who just opened last Friday, I believe. So Mary, I'd love to hear what strategies and planning you've put out and how are things going?
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be a part of this and to listen to everybody's various experiences. I will just tell you right now, for certain, my dogs are absolutely going to go crazy at some point while I'm talking, so I apologize in advance. First of all, just a little bit about me. I love to plan and anticipate and maybe could be confused as a control freak, which is not really true, but maybe is a little bit true. So there is nothing like a freaking pandemic, right, to just like blow that out the water. It's been fun, not at all stressful. So like everybody else, we started putting together our plan. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? What are we going to say? And worked it through. And as everybody knows, yep, we were able to work with the city, go to the state with the variance request, which was granted. And it was granted under really strict guidelines. We are not having volunteers immediately back on site. Part of that is because the large portion of our volunteers fall into the vulnerable category, which seems awfully young to me only because I'm trembling on the brink of becoming a vulnerable person. But anyhow, we'll not go too deep into that. Point being that we're holding off on our volunteers and some of them are champing at the bit to come back. And certainly our horticulture team is like, please, 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 can we have our volunteers back? So there's that situation that we're working with right now. And so that's going to be a phased reintroduction, if you will, of volunteers. I think that we, like every other organization, did this great job. A thought came to my mind today. We have fed the FOMO, right? Everybody, all of our most ardent fans are like fearful of missing out. We miss the tulips. We miss the iris, please let us back in. And so that's great. It resulted in the fact that once we did say, okay, we can reopen, we're going to reopen. We reopened last Friday, the 22nd. We announced that we're going to do time ticketing, advanced ticketing. And so we've set it up so that 60 people per half hour can come in. And that we don't give anybody, now you've got to leave because now you've been here too long. But we are trying to at least create a situation where we don't have everybody showing up at once. Initially, our plan was, okay, 2-hour time blocks, 250 people per time block. But as we consider the fact that all 250 might show up at the beginning of that time block, we thought it'd be more effective to set it up in these half-hour increments, which has proven to be an effective thing to do. What it has also done, interestingly, for us is typically in the past, we would have most people arrive in the morning and then fewer people in the heat of the afternoon or early evening. But by being forced, if you will, to select a time block, then that's been distributed more across the day, which I think is a better experience both for the visitor and quite frankly for the gardens. So that'll be interesting to watch. As people have alluded, I think we had members just glued to their Denver Botanic Gardens website, like finger over the button, I'm going to get a ticket. and boom, shakalaka, as soon as we opened it up, day after day after day, every single 30-minute increment filled up. And right now, virtually every morning, I believe, at present through June 7th, has all been sold out. So we are offering these time blocks to members and non-members. We're not delineating X number for members versus non-members, but I can tell you that as of yesterday, it would appear that 17% are non-members and everybody else is a member. If you are planning on great gate revenue as you consider your reopening plans, you should also anticipate that more members than not are going to be the first people to grab those time tickets. How you handle that, obviously everybody will do it differently. And then you're weighing, well, our members are very excited, so they're going to renew their membership, so that's the consistent revenue that we desperately want and need, versus the, oh my gosh, please, it would be so lovely to get a nice injection of revenue at the gate. So it's going well, obviously. My anticipation, I don't know what to anticipate anymore. I used to say, let us set all of our plans in Jell-O, and now I'm like, I am sticking pins in water right now. Nothing is the same as it was 5 minutes ago. So hard to say what's going to happen next. But I will say that the next 2 weeks should be interesting, particularly as other organizations are opening, as we watch, you know, is this a competitive thing? I'm going to get tickets every single day I can at Denver Botanic Gardens, or is it a, that's the only place I can go right now? Or is it, you know, we really do love you and we're going to come back every, whatever, Tuesday at 2. Some things we've learned, or well, perhaps let me step back a little bit and just talk about our process. So we also have closed all buildings outside of restroom access. So our conservatory, a lot of people love the conservatory. They can't visit it currently. The pathways are too narrow. We, for a little while, entertained the concept of establishing a one-way path, but given the tight constraints of the gardens, we felt that perhaps it would be better to distribute the visitation by allowing people to pick their favorite pathway instead of having everybody go one direction, because people do have favorite paths, little tiny paths. It could be that that will change, because for heaven's sake, everything's going to change. As soon as I tell you anything, 10 minutes from now, it's going to be different. So don't write any of this down. But we had the opportunity to utilize a ticket booth as opposed to our visitor center. So people are entering through our group gate. We have decals down establishing social distancing. And then we have scanning of the pre-purchase tickets. So it's as contact-free as we can make it. It's not perfect. It's not easy. We do ask everybody to wear masks, and as they obtain their tickets online, they have to check a box that would indicate that they actually did read the statement before just checking the ticket box saying, yes, I'm going to wear a mask, and yes, I understand everything. Yes, yes, yes. And then, okay, I got my ticket. I can't decide whether we're the canary in the coal mine or the guinea pig. I'm going to go towards guinea pig right now. So we have our outdoor restaurant, the Hive, open. Currently, we do not have any tables or chairs. The Hive has set up mobile ordering so people can order ahead of time. They are accepting walk-up. Once the food is prepared, it's placed on a table, then the customer goes and picks it up. And it continues to be a popular destination. We have required masks of all employees and all visitors. For all of you who are going to do that, and I would just love it if everybody would do this so it's consistent, but it's interesting how people do, while they're visiting, opt to create some fashion accessory with their mask that actually does not fulfill the purpose it's supposed to do. So there's the cute, it's right under my nose, but doesn't that count? And then there's the, I'll just kind of dangle it from an ear in case anybody comes and tells me to put it on, or there's the outright, well, it's around my neck, doesn't that count? I don't really have to wear a mask because I'm inside the gardens and it's a safe place. So that's fun. It's a great conversation. You know, people are demonstrating all elements of their humanity currently. Overwhelmingly, people love us. They're being very supportive of us. It's just those odd experiences that I think all of us are going to encounter, and trying to decide what is the best way to handle it as we go forward. Will probably be invaluable across the board. You know, if all of us can reach out to each other and say, holy Toledo, has this happened to you? Do you happen to have this particular person? That's probably going to be helpful. I think, again, our members love that there are only like 5 other people in a particular area. And please, can't you just keep it that way for me, because I really like it, you know? And what is going to happen as we do start easing, because restrictions ease and we can allow more people in, then I think we're going to start getting those fussy, well, I don't like it this way kind of a thing. But that's just something to be expected. We were on the brink. We had dropped our direct mail acquisition campaign at the beginning of March, and our big drive is because of our fabulous concert season, and that's a lot of people want to become members because of the concert season. And then right as we were about to drop the second of the 2 drops, boom, you know, nope, that's not going to happen. And so it was interesting to monitor member behavior as to who was becoming a member because of things that we were no longer able to offer, and who appears to be a member who's going to either join because they're supporting us and want to help us out, or are renewing because they love us and they want to help us out. And I'm quite frankly not 100% sure of how to handle an acquisition campaign currently, because so many of the hooks, if you will, that we would offer to potential members are not available. You know, as Marie was talking about the various experiences at the zoo or at DMNS, you know, well, so we're not going to have concerts. You can't go in the conservatory. We're not really sure about, you know, this special event or that special event. And you've got to wear a mask. It's going to be great. Why don't you join the gardens? You know, so we'll just have to see. It perhaps is the year where it's much more philanthropic than not. We did also, did I say this already? We canceled our summer camps. We just decided to cancel our summer camps. It's tough. It's a tough situation. Mordecai Children's Garden is closed for the season, and that was always a big draw. But we are, as ticket sales indicate, we're overwhelmed with support so far, and it is going well. I would ask anybody out there, if you just want to throw a question my way or ever want an opinion, heaven knows I will always give you my opinion, but I'm also happy just as a source of talking. I'd be happy to talk about whatever our experience has been going forward, because it's going to change. And we just hope that we continue to have this fabulous support from the cultural or, you know, community, because we do live in a fabulously lucky place in terms of the support of the community. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with membership. We'll see what happens with visitation as the summer goes by. But I think pretty much that is what I have in a nutshell.
Great, thank you so much, Mary. Thanks for sharing all that great info, and for also just reminding everybody too that this is a very, you know, we have to be flexible. We have to just sort of assess as things go on. I heard from Jacqueline, it's a phased approach. It's not sort of a one and done that we're doing things. We're constantly evaluating where we're at, getting guidelines from the state and the city as well. So I really appreciate hearing different aspects of that. So I'm going to get to some of our questions right now, and I'll circle back to all of you. But the first one is, can you talk about what your plans are if you need to pull back opening or close again after a few months? I'm sure that's a concern for all. Does anyone want to grab that question first?
I'll jump in just because I keep talking. It's like the worst nightmare out there, right? And of course, when is it going to hit? It was just great that it hit right as we're gearing up for busy season, just like the zoo and DMNS. and everybody else. And then heavens, couldn't it just hit right as we're gearing up for our fall and winter events that are the other, pillar of our revenue generation. So I think the way we're anticipating it is trying to be as careful and smart as possible and not rush to just open the floodgates right away. One example of that is that we are not opening up a whole summer's worth of tickets. We're opening them up as a rolling 2-week period because we don't want to be in the situation where people have claimed tickets all the way through, I don't know, September 5th, and suddenly we have to refund because we're shut down or have to deal with that situation. So I think it's a lot of careful balancing and anticipating. That's not really an answer, but there you go.
No, I think that's great. I think that's great, especially the slow plan, right? Because you can pull back when the numbers you have are much smaller than having a wide open ticketing system being open. Jacqueline, Marie, or Andrea, do you want to add to that, or I can go to the next one? I do want to add that we're going to stay until 12:15 today to answer some of these questions, and we've got about 20 here, so I'd love to get through them unless somebody wants to add to that particular one. No? Okay, great. What indicators are you using to move from phase 1 to 2 in your approach, Jacqueline?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've talked about that. A lot of the indicators come from what's happening across the landscape. It's not just internal, it's what are the restrictions that are being eased, what's happening in the community. We can't really move from phase 1 to phase 2 until there is an easing of restrictions and people are ready, our community is ready to come back in a bigger way. So we'll be, I don't have a direct answer for that because so much of it is dependent on what happens broader than just at the museum.
That's great. And are any of you allowing for private event rentals? Or is there a phased approach to anything at this moment? It's just off the table totally?
Yeah, we're not allowed to offer that right now. So as soon as, again, we're just kind of waiting for the restrictions to be lifted. And as soon as they're lifted, I'm sure everyone else is going to offer them. We're all going to offer them as soon as we can.
Okay, great. This question is also for DMNS. Have you adopted a strategy for dealing with interactive exhibits?
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting, the CDC, you probably saw just last week, came out with some really clear guidance around this not really being a highly touch reactive disease. So of course, we're complying with all the CDC guidelines above and beyond as far as wiping things down. We're not going to have out any interactives that can't be disinfected regularly. So we're practicing regular disinfectant protocol and all of that good stuff. But what is being found is that those face coverings are more important than were originally indicated and are becoming more and more important. This is considered to be more transmitted through contact, air contact, than it is through touch contact. And so that just came out last week. Although the guidelines for disinfecting did not get changed, the guidelines from the CDC, it looks like it's just going to make it ever more important for us to maintain physical distancing and face coverings.
Actually, and speaking of face coverings, I'm going to jump ahead in a question here since we're on that topic, and I'd love to hear from all of our panelists. Mask requirement and enforcement has become very contentious among some people. Can you talk more about the strategies you are putting in place to enforce mask wearing, and what will you do if guests resist?
I guess I'll jump in. It's been interesting. Our CEO has a great approach to this. The responsibility is a shared responsibility for us to remain open. It's not only our responsibility as the organization to provide a safe atmosphere, but it's the responsibility of the visitors to uphold the safety that we're trying to impart. And so we're going to try as best we can to kindly encourage people, please, please, please. And there will always be, well, what about a child who's a special needs child, or what about this person with this or this person with that? You know, there's always going to be that. But the general concept is that short of having a bell and saying shame, shame, shame behind somebody, which might be effective, we're going to try to approach people and just say, please put your mask back on. If somebody actually pushes back and says, no, I'm not going to do that, then we're going to unfortunately get our security team involved. I just really hope it doesn't come to that, but I should not even put those words out into the universe, because for sure that's inviting it to happen this afternoon. So we're just going to hope that we can make it a mutual responsibility experience, if you will.
It's a great way to look at that, Mary. Marie, do you want to add anything about Denver Zoo? Have you put a policy in place or how you will enforce it?
Yes, it's part of our employee training, because as I mentioned, we're going to have employees at intervals throughout the path, helping with wayfinding, answering questions, but also monitoring guest behavior and making sure that they are abiding by our rules. We're used to this anyway, with a bunch of little kids everywhere climbing over, you know, railings and things like that. So we are highly trained in guest behavior messaging, and exactly what Mary said. You know, we're going to be very nice at the beginning, and please, you know, some people just forget they don't have it on. They're not, I know I run out the door sometimes and have to run back in and grab a mask. We're just not conditioned yet. And so we're going to give people the you know, that doubt. So we're going to just ask them nicely a couple times, and if there is a altercation or just a blatant refusal, then we will unfortunately have to call security. It is our rules. And you know, in the city health ordinance, it says commercial businesses. We are a commercial business. So we're a private foundation, but it is a commercial business. So we do fall within that category, even though we're outside. So we do need them to abide by it. And I love the idea of a shared responsibility. If people really want to keep this open and keep our institutions thriving, they will help us with some of these rules. Just like if they need to wear one and going into King Soopers and can't get in, but you know, it's the same situation. And we know that they're uncomfortable, especially as it gets warmer outside. But we need to do this just for a short term until we can move on.
That's great. And I just also wanted to reiterate that Mary mentioned that for purchasing a ticket, there was a checkbox that you had to have read the guidelines and the policies for entering, which is really great. I'm going to move along to the next question. Where can I find info to determine what density is allowed in my institution? Where are you finding your guidelines for your spaces?
All right, I'm
Jacqueline?
jumping in again. Oh, no, go Jacqueline, go Jacqueline.
I was going to say that we were incredibly generous with our guidelines. Nobody gave us a number, but we took what we thought to be the intent of physical distancing and amplified it quite a bit to create our capacity, just knowing that we really need to stick on the high end of that, knowing that there are certain places people want to be more than others. So,
Right.
But there was no handbook for us.
Yes, there's no handbook for this. And it was discussions with the city when we did our variance application and wrote it. We shared all those and they approved. They had to approve those calculations, and they completely zeroed in and understood that. So as Jacqueline said, there's no blueprint for this. And again, we were very generous too, because we want to comply and we don't want people getting sick.
That's great, thank you. Are gift shops open in any of your organizations?
We have, you know, it's a great opportunity to pivot everybody and suddenly do something. They're like, oh, maybe we should do that in the future. So yes, our gift shop has online ordering capabilities now, and there is an outdoor element to the shop. We have a nice little shaded area people can sit. while they're waiting for something to be retrieved, if it's something that they're picking up, or they can do curbside. But yeah, so that's how we're handling it currently. And it's possible, you know, that as things, you know, it's all about restrictions being relaxed. The restrictions get relaxed, and so we can allow 1 or 2 people inside the shop in a very careful way, but that's down the line.
Gotcha. Marie, I believe Denver Zoo has their gift shop online as well, don't they?
Yes, we just launched it, and it's pretty fun. It's exciting to see what people are buying, and so we're going to keep that rolling.
Great. And what about at DMNS? Is your gift shop open, or will it open when you open?
It will open when we open, and we will also have an online functionality and a drop-off pickup. You can order and we'll bring it out to your car.
Excellent. Great. We're going to be wrapping up here soon, but I want to get a couple more questions in. What are the restrictions, or are there any restrictions on using restrooms and water fountains?
We've actually, I can't remember the number, but we've brought in a lot of porta potties and a lot of water stations, hand washing stations. We have installed numerous Purell disinfectant stations all throughout the zoo. Because our buildings are closed, which is where the restrooms are, and we've got a lot of little ones there, we know that restrooms access is very important. So we've brought in quite a few, and they're already installed around the zoo.
Yeah, we initially had restricted our restroom access to 1 space, and just yesterday extended that so that we have 2 specific multi-stall restrooms available, as well as we have 2 restrooms available that are attached to our Hive restaurant. And so then we just have to be on a very strict cleaning protocol on the part of our housekeeping staff to make sure that every space is cleaned quickly. We don't have on-site porta potties. We have established a couple of hand washing stations. For anybody who's out there shopping around for some disinfectant or some Purell or plexiglass for that matter, it's a tough purchase to find right now. So I think we're all just facing a lot of interesting challenges that way.
Great, thank you. I'm going to get to just like one more question, and then I want to wrap up with some informational things that might be useful to folks. I'm curious if any of you have changed admission prices or have altered the times in terms of admissions. I think, Mary, you were saying you're in at 30-minute increments. Has there been any changes to admission prices?
No, we're not changing prices. We currently are operating under different hours than we have typically, in that we're open from 9 until 7, not extending yet to 9 p.m., but our admission prices have not changed.
Great, thank you. I know there's some questions we didn't get to, but we're going to be wrapping it up here. It's at the 12:13 mark. First, I wanted to share a really valuable resource that's being put out by the College of Arts and Media at the University of Colorado, Denver, and it's in partnership with the Colorado Office of Film, Television, and Media. It's to help nonprofits with social media aspects. If you're new to Facebook Live, Twitch, if you're having issues, don't know how to use these social media tools, the CAM Creative Corps is there. It's a student-run program, and they're there to help nonprofits. You can go to their website, which Kelly is going to put in our chat. You can put in a request, and they will help you with social media. So you get some really tech-savvy students who are willing to help our cultural organization. So please know that they are a great resource for everyone. Also, this webinar is recorded, and you can find it back on the office pages on the webinar series page of the Office of Film, Television, and Media, where you register. That's also where they post the link. So you can see it usually takes a day or two for the cloud service to get that ready, but you can review it there if you need to in the future. And also, anyone who's registered for today's webinar, Kelly will also send out the PDF that DMNS shared with us today, as well as any other links that were shared today. So she will send that back out to anyone who's registered because we've got their email addresses. So I just want to thank our panelists today for joining us, for sharing this valuable information. It's ever evolving. I'm sure we'll regroup again at a later time to share even more information. Please reach out to us. Let us know if there's some specific questions. I'm sure we can get connected with our organization. So thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Kelly, for hosting our meeting today. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.